Welcome to the Logitech McLaren G Challenge 2022, a global sim racing competition. Register at logitechgchallenge.com, then complete qualifying to make it through to the knockout grid stage. After each knockout race, top performing drivers will move forward to the next knockout round. Move through each knockout grid to reach the final knockout race of the split. Our top 8 knockout split winners will receive a Logitech G Pro X wireless headset, with our top 2 drivers receiving a signed Lando Norris 1/18 scale Formula 1 McLaren. Place in the top 4 to move on to the regional grand finals and take your shot at winning a once-in-a-lifetime experience at the 2023 Formula 1 Austrian Grand Prix, a Logitech G Pro Racing wheel, and a share of a $100,000 cash prizing. But anyone can win. Any competitor who completes a full race is eligible to join our Logitech McLaren G Challenge sweepstakes, where you can win Logitech G products or even the grand prize trip to the Austrian Grand Prix. Think you have what it takes? Sign up to compete at logitechgchallenge.com.
Coming into the ring with blows that's real big. I gotta do it big, that's the only way I can live. Gotta do it big. I gotta do it big. I gotta do it big. Gotta do it big, that's the only way to live. Come on. Yeah, the odds is real big. Job that's real big. Say trying a little, my God is real big. Stayed up on the ground and the cards is real big. I gotta do it big, the only way that I can live.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Logitech McLaren G Challenge. The 2022 season is just about ready to get started, and we're going to get started here on the broadcast with our Celebrity Grid exhibition races. My name is Blue, I'll be your host for today, and joining me is someone that I think the longtime viewers of the Logitech G Challenge will be very familiar with. Luke, welcome back.
Great to be here. It's like my 5th year now. Feels like it's like my little baby, the G Challenge. It's great to see it back in 2022, and I'm excited to see these celebrities go around the circuits today.
Well, it's good to have you back. Let's go ahead and take a look at the format for today's races and see what exactly the challenge has awaiting. We'll be doing 3 races, the first of which will be 15 minutes with a predetermined grid through qualification, which is just wrapped up. And then as we move on to races number 2 and 3, we'll be reducing that to 10 minutes, but we're also going to be going with a reverse grid based on the point results. Obviously, race number 2 will be based on race number 1's results, and race number 3 will be based on the combined results from both races. You can see where the placements will be netting you points there at the bottom as well. First, we'll be getting away with 15. That'll give you a nice little cushion over the second place finish, with 3 points ahead of that one. You'll get 12 for second, 10 points for third, 8 for fourth, and continuing down from that point forward. We can take a look at the drivers we'll be having on the grid today. And Luke, why don't you go ahead and break this down for us?
Well, what a star-studded field we have. Of course, Lando Norris needs no introduction. McLaren F1 driver, an esports extraordinaire in the world of sim racing and Twitch streaming as well. Whatever game he plays, whether he's just talking, tends to get 10, 20,000 people watching him. Tony Kanaan, an absolute legend in the world of motorsport and indeed sim racing, Indy 500 champion, IndyCar champion as well, currently racing in the Brazil Pro Stock Car Series as well. Ash Vandalay, who's made a massive splash on YouTube and indeed Twitch, getting involved with sim racing, racing within her team as well in special events, but also doing watch-alongs with Formula 1 and other series like iRacing as well. Then we've got Brenton Hobson, who indeed is from the APAC region, and he's got a massive career in video content creation, in kind of teaching people the nuances in the world of sim racing. Then we've got Boostler from Mexico, the biggest Mexican streamer of F1 content out there. Then we've got Khleo Thomas, of course, most famous really for me personally, one of my favorite films of all time, Holes, but also has been in Shameless, has his own record label, now on in the world of Twitch streaming as well, an incredibly famous guy there as well. Then we've got Suellio Almeida, the Canadian, a 2-time F3 champion on iRacing, an incredibly talented driver, a driver coach in the world of sim racing as well. And then we've got Maxime MXM representing the EU as well, a Logitech G content creator. And if you see a celebrity grid within sim racing, you'll see Maxime on that grid.
Moving on from that, of course, we mentioned it before, 3 races. That means 3 different circuits to jump onto for today's races. We'll be starting out with race number 1 on Brands Hatch in the UK. We'll move over to the Hungaroring in Hungary, of course, for race number 2. And then finally, we'll take a quick trip to Italy for Misano to round out the day on our 3rd race. Without any further ado, let's take a look at the grid order as well as the initial trackers. It'll be Suellio Almeida starting things out at the top of the grid in position 1. Lando Norris will take P2. Following that up, Tony Kanaan will be our 3rd place start. Brenton Hobson will take 4th, followed up by Boostler F1 in 5th position. Maxime Bijmans will be taking 6th place. 7th will be Vandalay. And then finally, we'll have Khleo Thomas in the back of the pack at 8th. It'll be on Brands Hatch, of course, a fairly difficult track. Let's break down some of the nuances of Brands Hatch before we get ourselves into it.
Yeah, out of our 3 circuits, this really is the one where you need to be qualifying at the top end of the grid because it's so easy to defend. If you want to make an overtake, you realistically have to set up out of the final corner, down in towards turn number 1, but again, you're still not going to be able to get the move done into turn number 1. You've got to force a driver wide and then try and send one up the inside into turn 2. If you're ahead going into turn number 2 or on the exit of turn number 2, the rest of the circuit is pretty easy to defend on, but it's one of those as well. If you run wide around here, it's grass or it's gravel, you are game overed. Also, there's barriers very, very close by as well, so you've got to keep it between the mayo and the mustard, and ultimately just be very, very patient or qualify really well, just like Almeida.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so with that out of the way, it's time to jump into race number 1 of our Celebrity Grid. Let's get into it.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to have a full formation lap here as well. So, yeah, normally around a circle like this, it'd be like a shorter formation, with the final corner only being the corner we go through. But it looks like we're going to do a full formation lap here for our race. It will be a rolling start as well. But it is Almeida, probably the driver we expected to be at the front, of course, being a 3-time F3 champion in the world of sim racing. Just to reach that level is one thing, but to go out there and win it is very impressive indeed. So yeah, expecting him to be up there. Of course, Norris, who races with Max Verstappen in the world of sim racing, maybe not so much these days, but has done in the past and has won some major honours within the world of sim racing. One of the best drivers in the world, right? Races in Formula 1. Of course, he's going to be in and amongst it. Brenton Hobson, Tony Kanaan. You could throw those 2 names up in the air and just catch one of them, and you know that's who's going to finish ahead. It's kind of that close between those 2. Boostler F1, I think he's going to be a driver that will get faster as the day goes on. Again, very much an F1 driver, so to come across to this is a very, very different challenge, but already in the top 5 here. Maxime MXM, another driver, a confidence driver, so across this whole day, will get faster as the day goes on. But it's all about picking the opportunities, making overtakes, but later on when she will start, no doubt, a little bit further up the grid because of the reverse grid, that's when she will come into her own. Vandalay, again, very much an iRacing specialist. It's new to her, coming on to ACC down in P7. And then we've got Khleo Thomas. I think could be a bit of a surprise today. Once he gets things figured out, could be a massive danger to sort of maybe mid-pack battling. So very interesting grid we've got here today.
You did see, of course, here to get himself a lap time during qualification, so he's going to be at the back of the grid, but like you said, could be a surprise in seeing his improvement over the course of today. Just finishing things up on the formation lap as we come about halfway around it now, getting ourselves towards the end. See Almeida continuing to loop around the track, just trying to get those tires nice and warm. Since we have the full formation lap, might as well take the opportunity to do so here and make sure you get as good of a start as possible when we come back around the starting line. Yeah,
if you can prepare the tires properly on the formation lap, it can gain almost a second on the first lap. It's really that important. So yeah, you've got to make sure you get the heat into the tires. Almeida, of course, knows exactly what he needs to do here and is doing the perfect job as it stands. Yeah, so just get the heat into the tyres. But the one thing they will not have to worry about during a race is tyre wear. So it's only a 15-minute race. This game is built for endurance in terms of the tyres. It's very much based on the GT World Challenge Series. And those tyres tend to last around about an hour, around about a stint. So yeah, they've nothing to worry about in terms of tyre wear. They will be going flat out from start to finish here. And well, it should provide a very nice spectacle here for race number 1. So here we go then. Coming up towards that final corner on the formation lap here for our celebrity grid for the Logitech McLaren G Challenge. It is indeed Almeida on pole position, Lando Norris in second, Kanaan, Hobson are on your second row, Boostler, F1 and Maxime MXM are in 5th and 6th. Vandalay and Khleo Thomas round out your 8 drivers then. It's 15 minutes of racing here at Brands Hatch. Very tight, very twisty circuit. and who is going to get the best start then. We'll wait for the green lights to appear. They will go across the line, and then it will be down to them for their reaction time. Almeida will take them away. Look at Lando Norris trying to get a nice run here as well, if he can time it perfectly well. We are green light racing here. They're down towards turn number 1. Almost contact then between Lando and indeed Suellio as we come down towards turn number 1, and there is contact then, and Lando now is going to be under some severe pressure. We've got Hobson then trying to find a little move up the inside in towards turn number 2. We'll go late on the brakes. Lando closes across the nose there, does hold on to position. Oh, and he's been spun then. Well, no, I don't think he actually had any contact there initially. I feel like he got on the power maybe a little bit too early, and actually Hobson may have just righted him round. Tony Kanaan has taken full advantage of Hobson and Lando Norris's contact. He moves up to top 3, but Almeida already up in the order. He's gone about a second and a half in the lead. Perfect start there for Almeida.
That's the big story for Almeida, is just how cleanly he's able to get away from things at the beginning of this. No disruption, despite Lando attempting to get a good line to attempt to do so, coming around the second turn on Druids. But unfortunately, Tony Kanaan as well as Hobson getting into his way. As you mentioned, we saw potentially that slight contact between Hobson and Norris. Kanaan will take advantage of that, be able to at least get past Hobson, but great recovery from Norris to still be able to keep his P2 start.
Yeah, 100% there. Again, it happened a bit too fast for me to be able to figure out whether there was initially contact. There definitely was in the end, and I feel like Lando may have just put the power down. He's going into turn number 2 at a very tight angle, trying to close the nose off of Hobson so Hobson couldn't make the move, and ultimately then sort of the rear of the car lost traction, and once you're inputting towards the right, the car's just going to completely slide to the right, and then I think Hobson kind of righted him back in the right direction, so it's kind of, yeah, Hobson wasn't helping him initially by trying to make a move, but then helped him completely by putting him in the right direction. Tony Kanaan, though, he's looking at that thinking, yes, lads, I'm absolutely getting involved in this. Up to P3, you don't have to give him an invitation to make an overtake in motorsports, that's a fact. A bit further down the order then, Boostler F1, currently in P5, Maxime MXN is still in P6, then we've got Vandalay in 7th, and then Thomas down in 8th position as it stands. So yeah, 1.6 seconds now the advantage then from Almeida. Lando Norris with a bit of work to do here.
Hobson and Kanaan are still going to stay relatively close to each other. Hobson will lose a little bit of time coming up onto it, but he's certainly going to be sitting back, waiting for an opportunity to try to battle back for that P3 positioning. You can see just biting at the opportunity to do so, only 0.3 seconds behind Kanaan at this point, but Kanaan thankfully able to maintain a pretty solid line so far. He's going to be able to keep himself consistent in that 3rd place hold as we continue on with the race and continue to move back towards the starting line.
You see Hobson there coming through 30s, just on the brakes a little bit earlier, trying to be fast on the exit of the corners. And that's how you maximise your performances. Lando Norris there, off of doing a little bit of rally cross on the exit of the double right hand at the top of the hill here at Brands Hatch. But yeah, Hobson's just trying to be slow into the corner and then fast out and trying to get alongside down in towards the next set of corners. But it's just so difficult to make an overtake, although Hobson has got a lovely run up here then towards that final sector. We've got merely 2 corners to go before we go across that start-finish line to start lap number 3. Hobson was close, but actually just dropped back ever so slightly. But this is the most important part of the circuit here. Down in towards the final corner, you've got to just try and get a run onto the driver in front of you and then set it up through turn number 1. So you've got to force them to go defensive effectively down in towards the curbing here. I've got Norris not quite close enough to Almeida, although he is closing that gap. It was 1.6 seconds. It wasn't, it went down to 1.3, but that little mistake there on the exit of turn number 1 is actually going to cost Lando here a little bit, but he is closing in on Almeida. But yeah, with the Kanaan-Hobson battle, you've got to try and force a driver to run a little bit wide through turn number 1, which means you get the momentum and you can maybe send one up the inside towards turn number 2. That's the most important part of the circuit.
Hobson still trying to make those gains on Kanaan. We are seeing him cut a little bit deeper into turn 7. Then his opponent sitting in front of him here, so he's able to make up a little bit of time on that track, but overall still losing it. As you'll see, he'll fall back to now a second behind him from when we previously checked in on it. Away from that, though, most positions staying constant, no one close to making a gain just yet here as we come back around the longer straight of this track in those longer turns towards 5 and 6 for Hawthorne and Westfield.
I tell you what, Lando Norris is absolutely flying here. He's gained 0.6 of a second this lap time already. He's now 0.9 seconds behind our leader Almeida. Yeah, he's definitely flying here. Over the top of the hill we will come. And again, just about momentum, getting a momentum lap here. You make one mistake, it's going to cost you hugely through every single corner. You run off line ever so slightly, you run at least 2 wheels off the track here. There's no runoff to work with. So in the grass, of course, it's going to be slower. In the gravel, it's going to be slower. But yeah, Norris starting to find a bit of form here as we head on towards lap number 5.
Like you said here, this track does not provide a lot of that extra runoff room for our racers. Here you do have sometimes a little bit of extra support in the form of some concrete curbing to supply it next to that grass, but it's still not going to be the best for traction, so you'll want to be careful about how you're running yourself around those corners and making sure, so trying to maintain the optimal line. Speaking of which, we'll see one of the more difficult turns coming up here for our 2 leaders as they work their way around Druids and try to continue forward on towards Surtees, as Lando Norris still trying to close that gap, and in the process we'll take out some of the cones here, trying to wrap things around on turn 3.
Yeah, we just saw there through grey Graham Hill. You can run a little bit wide on the exit of turn number 3. There's a bit of meshing, which kind of gives you a bit of grip there, a bit of AstroTurf as well. So you can run off the curb there, but ultimately if you run a little bit too far, it's all uphill. So you're not only going to lose speed, but it makes it very, very difficult to then get back onto the circuit. And as you can see, that little mistake has cost him maybe a couple of tenths of a second here. Almeida seems to have figured whatever the issue he was having out, because he was losing time massively. But the front two still separate by about 1.2 seconds. They've dropped Tony Kanaan. Hobson now, by the way, 0.3 of a second behind Kanaan. So it looks like the battle for that podium really is starting to warm up then. Boostler about 3.9 seconds then behind this battle we're seeing on our screens right now. And then we've got MXM off the circuit we go. Tony Kanaan then takes a trip towards the kitty litter. Hobson says, thank you very much, I'll take P3. And well, that's almost a guaranteed podium now, because Kanaan is about 2.5, maybe 3 seconds behind.
Secured third place, potentially coming in for Hobson, and it's a position that he'd been looking to get back ever since the start of this race, when we saw that slight contact go on turn 2, coming around on the first lap there. Finally able to achieve this back, and he's been chasing it for a while, so he's going to be able to take this back away from Tony Kanaan, and like you said, more than likely lock things in now due to that slight off-track run from Kanaan.
Yeah, and that's just you know, putting pressure on a driver in front of you. It doesn't matter whether, you know, if someone's done a couple of laps with your Tony Kanaan, who's, you know, got so much experience in the world of motorsport and indeed sim racing. If you just position yourself in a position where they have to be looking in the mirrors at you, you're going to make a mistake at some point there. And it's a very the place where the mistake happened is the place where it's most likely to happen, if that makes sense, because there's a sort of a hill, a right-hand turn. If you get offline ever so slightly, it just kicks you off to the left if you don't hit it perfectly. That's why you're seeing people cut the curb there so massively, because if you run onto the circuit a little bit too far left, it goes then off camber, and then again, like I said, it shoots you off to the left-hand side.
See Boostler doing a little bit of that now as he works his way off of that turn 3, moving further down the track here now into turns 5 and 6, though, as he continues to try and gain that pace on to Tony Kanaan. Unfortunately, due to the distance, going to be quite the struggle to do so, as he's still sitting about 3 seconds behind him at this point. Kanaan as well going to be struggling to catch up, but even so, the rest of the race now shifts to really our leaders between Almeida as well as Norris here. Norris still 2 seconds behind him as well, but like you mentioned previously, has been closing slightly onto him since the start of it. We're about halfway through the race at this point as well, so we'll have to keep following that and see if an opportunity to pass will finally come towards the tail end.
Yeah, 100%. Almeida's really figured something out here, because, yeah, Lando was catching him massively. It was every single lap, maybe half a second, but at this point, Almeida is well, just streaking away here as it stands. Gap coming down through the corners, of course, the Concertina effect coming into play. But I will say, Tony Kanaan is not losing too much time to Hobson here, so I think you'll find that Kanaan might be able to catch back up here. And again, it's a very, very difficult circuit to overtake on. But if you've got someone to reference in front of you, it's very difficult to think. It's very easy to close up to someone behind as well. You just got to put that pressure on. It's all about pressure around here. You've got to force a mistake, really, to make the overtake.
Absolutely the case, and things continue onward down the long straight for some of our leaders. Hobson going to see if he can gain some time here, but won't be able to find it. It'll be up to Norris now to make sure he gets himself on this clean line. We have one of the faster sections of track here as well. What's the key to trying to capitalize on things in these much more faster paced turns, as we actually are going to see a moment of opportunity here for Norris. Just coming by Khleo Thomas, though, as he's unfortunately struggling a little bit there in the back of the pack.
Well, it's all about risk and reward. You can see there Norris, 2 wheels there off the white line, just beyond the white lines, and you've got to pick your opportunities around here, because certain places around this circuit, on the exit of the corner, there's mesh to work with beyond the curbing. In other places, just like here, around the final corner, you run onto the grass there, you're going to continue to go. So it's about high risk, high reward. Some places you can afford to run off the circuit ever so slightly. Other places, it's just, yeah, it's race ruining. As we come through turn number 1 here, you've got to try and be so tight to the entrance here, and you can run out all the way onto the green AstroTurf there, but ultimately, you know, a couple of inches further to the left, and that gravel trap is not only going to slow you down, but it's going to drag you in and pull you out further. As we come then on the exit of turn number 2, you can see here through Graham Hill 3, you grab a bit of curb on the entry, you can run out a little bit wide there, but if you go beyond that mesh again, you go into the grass, you can see that uphill, you're going to lose momentum, but also it's going to make it very difficult to get back in. Through here, through turn number 4, it's all about getting a wide entrance and being able to maximize your exit speed, because you've got a long straight. This is the longest straight apart from the start-finish straight to work with. And now this is a very interesting corner here, because it's downhill into an uphill braking zone. So it's very easy to make a mistake as we come then through the first of our double right-handers. And again, you can use all of the curbing there, run out a little bit further wide, and ultimately you can completely lose the car. And now, this is the most important section, really. This is where you can lose the most amount of time, because ultimately, if you're not on the limit through here, you know, someone else behind you will be. But if you go beyond that limit, you're going to be in some serious trouble. You see Lando in behind using all of the track and more. Almeida who's done hard work now. You know, he's getting the reward for getting that 2.5 second gap. He doesn't have to push the car as much as what Lando has to do if Lando wants to win this race. Around that final corner, and again, you see, keeping it between those white lines. So it's just such a unique circuit. There should be more circuits like this in the real world of motorsport. I'm saying that, you know, I watch Formula One and the new circuits, there's so much runoff and there's just no real jeopardy for drivers, you know, if they run off and run wide, and that's why track time penalties are having to be done by stewards and stuff. If you had grass, if you had gravel on the edges of every single corner in motorsport, you wouldn't see people trying to take liberties with track limits. It's as simple as that.
Definitely, as it becomes a much more risk versus reward scenario, especially when it comes to your traction as well as keeping that speed going off of the turn. Speaking of which, Norris running a little bit wide coming off of turn 3, but as you mentioned, having the room to do so, is going to stay just within those track limits there to keep himself in the race. Unfortunately, still struggling to catch up to Suellio as he's continuing to dominate in first place. We'll check back in with Tony Kanaan as well, who's been staying consistent in that 4th place position. Seems like the grid spreading itself out quite consistently now as moments of opportunity are passing for any types of change up in our positioning here.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that Hobson obviously qualified ahead of Kanaan, then lost the position while battling for 2nd position with Lando, and then just forced a mistake from Tony Kanaan, and he's been able to drive away here. So Hobson's showing some really, really good form, and ultimately will start ahead of Norris and Almeida in the next race because of the reverse grid. The championship order effectively will be the grid, but reversed. But then you've got Khleo Thomas and Vandalay, who will start on the front row. Then got Maxime MXM and Boostler will start in 6th and 5th. And there's opportunities there for them to defend. You know, Hungaroring is very similar to Brands Hatch. Very difficult place to make overtaking. Maybe a little bit easier than Brands Hatch. But then we head to Misano. That's really where it's going to be interesting because there's overtaking opportunities aplenty in our race number 3. But it is still only race number 1. Almeida still looking so strong. 3 seconds ahead here as Lando Norris has closed in by about a second. Did he make a mistake there? Didn't look like it. I think that might indeed be the timing as Almeida is now extending it once again. But yeah, Lando currently in 2nd spot. I'm not sure whether, as much as he knows that Almeida is an incredible driver, Lando Norris is not going to be happy being in 2nd.
Definitely not the case, given the caliber of his skill, of course. So we'll see if there's going to be any more opportunities for him to close the gap. At least make this a little bit more competitive as we get into it. Like you mentioned, though, as we move into races 2 and 3, we are going to be starting with that reverse grid, so there'll be hopefully a little bit more action to get things started out inside of those races. We'll see how drivers like Suellio as well as Lando Norris will start potentially from the back of the pack if we're to assume that these positions will stick over the next 2 minutes and 40 seconds to close out this race and the final lap that'll come after that, of course.
What an incredible grid we've got here, though. We've got Almeida, who is a world champion in sim racing. Then you've got Lando Norris, who's a Formula 1 driver that, you know, most would say that's the pinnacle of motorsport. And then you've got Tony Kanaan, who's an IndyCar champion, IndyCar 500 champion, all on the same grid. That is just, for me, mind-blowing.
It's a great variety we've got here, to be sure. I'm really still continuously impressed as well with Hobson. Like you said, content creator, been putting out some great guides over on YouTube about how to get more into racing sims, and he's really holding his own here. Like we said, got that great pass over Tony Kanaan earlier on around, I believe it was lap 3, that he was able to finally get ahead of him after losing control of his 3rd place start back on lap number 1. Has been able to get it back going, though, and seems like he's locked it in since then, as the rest of our grid continues to evolve here, coming into the final 2 minutes now.
Yeah, he's also got part of Lando's car on his car as well. He wanted to change the paint scheme of his car. Wanted a bit of that papaya orange. As Lando Norris has made a huge error here. Is he going to save it? No, he's not. Into the wall we go. And is that an opportunity for Hobson? Damage is on, of course. That is going to be a very slow McLaren. Wrong way around the track here, trying to indeed recover. Into another wall we will go. Very Austin Powers-esque. And while Hobson says, thank you very much, I'll have P2, Tony Kanaan moves up into a podium position. And well, that's what happens. Almeida have done all the hard work being in P1, and he's just put so much pressure on Lando being in P2. He's just over pushed the car through turn number 3 and ultimately has ended off into the barrier.
Somewhat similar story to what happened from Kanaan earlier. Obviously, we had much more direct pressure coming in from Hobson against him, but just pushed him a little bit too far, trying to make up time, trying to get ahead of his opponent, and as a result, took too big of a risk here. Ends up spinning out off the track and losing 2 positions now, as Hobson will be very happy in his 2nd place, and Kanaan will be all right now that he's back inside of the podium. Boostler as well will find himself an opportunity to move up and pass on Lando, moving him up to 4th.
Yeah, and with, 48 seconds remaining, will be another lap once they next cross the line as well. Maxime MXM potentially could catch up to Lando if he's got some really severe damage to that car. It just all depends on how bad it is. You can see there the car is not looking in great nick at all, if we're being completely honest there, as we are on board then with Almeida. There's Thomas once again, having a bit of fun with the barriers, just figuring stuff out again. We've got a couple more races here today, so I'm sure we're going to see the best from Thomas at some point. But yeah, Almeida plain sailing right now, 14.4 seconds the advantage here. We expected Almeida to be in the front. I'm not sure he's expecting it to be this impressive.
Definitely the case here, and as we come down to the final 10 seconds, so move more than likely into one final lap, I believe. Almeida is all but assured at this point to be holding that first place finish at the end of it, locking things in for maximum points on our first race. But that also means maximum difficulty, of course, moving into our second track in just a few minutes here, as he will have to be starting from the back of the grid, heading over to the Hungaroring.
Yeah, 100%. You know, that's the nature of the format that's been chosen for this, which I love. I think it gives everyone a chance to run at the front as well. It also gives a challenge to the drivers just to kind of dodge cars, just make sure they don't get involved in anything if they want to win consecutive races. But as we come up then towards the final corner, Almeida leading the way here. He's also done a 1:24.447 during this race, which is 1/10 of a second off of what his qualifying time was, with heavier fuel as well. As we cross the line, and there is the checkered flag. It is the race win here for Almeida in race one of our celebrity grid here. Logitech McLaren G Challenge, and Brenton Hobson, who probably would have been thinking at lap number 1, oh, a podium here might be out of stretch, but P2 is indeed going to be the result he gets in the end. He had to make the overtake on Tony Kanaan. Of course, Lando making the mistake has handed him that P2. Kanaan then will take P3. Boostler F1 takes a P4. Then we've got Lando Norris in 5th position, which is a pretty good finish considering the damage on that car. Then we've got Maxime MXM, who's going to finish in P6. Ash Vandalay in 7th position, and then we've got Khleo Thomas in 8th spot.
I think a good first race to start out our celebrity grid here for the Logitech McLaren G Challenge, and we'll have to see how things get spicier as we move on to our second and third races, of course. But Suellio certainly setting a good pace here with his consistent first place finish and pretty much perfect run on Brands Hatch. No mistakes along the way. Best qualifying time by nearly a second there, as we saw Lando trying to catch up to it towards the end, but just unable to do so, and then continued to set that pace as we went into the actual race time.
Yeah, Almeida for sure. We got helped out a little bit at the start of this race with Hobson getting a phenomenal start and actually putting the pressure on Lando Norris. So he sent Lando Norris offline early on, which meant he could grab himself a second and a half advantage. And then, of course, Kanaan and indeed Hobson were battling for position for maybe 3 or 4 laps. So yeah, incredible stuff from them. Boostler F1 just taking full advantage. But watch out for Boostler. I think he's going to get faster and faster as the day goes on.
So as it comes back to us, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get ourselves ready for race number 2 coming up in just a second on the Hungaroring. We'll have that reversed grid, so there's plenty more action abound in just a few minutes. Stick with us. We'll be right back with more of the Celebrity Grid here from the G Challenge.
Welcome to the Logitech McLaren G Challenge 2022, a global sim racing competition. Register at logitechgchallenge.com, then complete qualifying to make it through to the knockout grid stage. After each knockout race, top performing drivers will move forward to the next knockout round. Move through each knockout grid to reach the final knockout race of the split. Our top 8 knockout split winners will receive a Logitech G Pro X wireless headset, with our top 2 drivers receiving a signed Lando Norris 1/18 scale Formula 1 McLaren. Place in the top 4 to move on to the regional grand finals and take your shot at winning a once-in-a-lifetime experience at the 2023 Formula 1 Austrian Grand Prix, a Logitech G Pro Racing wheel, and a share of a $100,000 cash prizing. But anyone can win. Any competitor who completes a full race is eligible to join our Logitech McLaren G Challenge sweepstakes, where you can win Logitech G products or even the grand prize trip to the Austrian Grand Prix. Think you have what it takes? Sign up to compete at logitechgchallenge.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Logitech McLaren G Challenge. It's our celebrity grid here today to kick off the season. We're getting ready to jump into race number 2, which is going to transition over to the Hungaroring. Let's go ahead and take a look at the starting grid for race number 2 as we get ready to move into it. Like we mentioned previously, it's going to be a reverse of the previous race results. That means Khleo Thomas is going to get pole position to start things out. Vandalay will take our second place position. Maxime will be in third to start the second line. Lando will follow her. Directly next to in 4th place. 5th place will be Brenton Hobson. 6th start will be Boostler F1. Finally, we'll have Kanaan in 7th, and the race leader from race number 1, Suellio Almeida, will take the final position. It'll be on Hungaroring as well, so big change up here in terms of the amount of turns, but I think the passing difficulty is only really going to increase on this track. Luke, break this track down. Tell us where our racers are going to need to try and capitalize on the most time and the most opportunities to pass their opponents.
Yeah, it really comes down to the turn number 1, turn number 2, and then the final 2 corners around this circuit if you want to make an overtake. It's very similar to Brands Hatch in terms of the nature of the circuit. It's very difficult to make overtakes. It's very narrow, but there are some runoff areas, so there is a little bit of wiggle room for the drivers. The racing drivers love to take full advantage of any advantage they can gain, right? You know, within time, it's all about hundredths of a second, maybe even thousandths of a second. But yeah, really, it's all about setting yourself up for that final corner. It's 270 degree corner, and also it's like a double apex. You can take it out nice and wide, but you can leave yourself open to someone diving up the inside. But also, if that does happen, you're then going to be susceptible to people behind you running all the way down in towards turn number 1. So if you can also set someone up to be defensive through turn number 1, then you maybe will get a better run down in towards turn number 2. But there's also opportunities through turn 2 on the inside, or indeed on the outside, because the next right-hander comes up very quickly, turn number 3, and if you're on the outside, you've got a little bit of an overlap, you can send it through on the inside.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, with that said, let's get ourselves ready as race number 2 is just about ready to get started. Let's head down to the start and get things going. Definitely going to be a fun time as we come off of the starting line for just that little formation here in the final corner. Kanaan did have to go into the pits, so we'll see what's going on with that in a moment, but I don't believe that's going to disrupt the start of our race, as we'll still see everybody moving along in pairs, just moving on to the starting line here.
Well, you can see Khleo Thomas here is as far as he possibly can be up the grid, but Kanaan, I think, might have to start from the pit lane here, which is not ideal in the slightest. As you can see, the formation lap here is, well, all over the place. And as we get started, then we are green light racing, and I think that might be, is that Lando dropping down a bit further? Well, as we go then up towards turn number 1, it's Vandalay that does lead. We see a potential late lunge here. Now I think Norris is in second spot. Vandalay runs off the circuit then and says hello to the AstroTurf on the outside. And that's a long run down in towards turn number 2 here. So Lando Norris does lead. So it wasn't Lando that was dropping back there. I think it's Khleo Thomas actually that was dropping back. Kanaan then, again, we'll have to wait to see as to whether Tony did indeed make it out of the pits. Then Almeida already up to second position, by the way. An incredible performance in race number 1, and from P8 up to second merely in 4 corners.
Excellently raced so far, but it's Lando, of course, taking charge of things in that pole position. We can see Hobson here trying to make a run against Vandalay as well, but Vandalay cuts off the corner. Hobson will be able to go wide on this turn, continuing to make pace, though. Hobson, a bit of contact potentially between Hobson and Vandalay. That'll push her off the track, but allow Hobson to excel and move back up into the top 4 positioning here that he raced in for our previous race. Still, it's Maxime sitting in the way, up in 3rd, however.
Yeah, through the chicane then in the second sector here at the Hungaroring, and I love that from Vandalay. Get the elbows out. Unfortunately, more of a reactionary decision there, and ultimately the move had been done by Hobson, hence Vandalay running off the circuit there. But again, doesn't matter. Don't worry about reputations here, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody's going to get their elbows out. 8/10 of a second now is the lead for Norris on Almeida. Almeida really is catching up. Then we've got Maxime Bijmans currently in 3rd, with Hobson right behind, Boostler F1 as well right behind as we come then through towards that final 3 corners. Maxime Bijmans is going to run ever so slightly wide here, opens up that door then for Hobson. Hobson's now just going to be slow in, fast out once again. Take a nice wide line, but look, leaves that door open for Boostler F1. These 3 putting on an absolute show. There's the entry to the pit lane. Make sure you don't go to the right there of the V as we come then through that final corner. But he finds a lovely move there, does Hobson. Door left ever so slightly ajar, and Hobson with both feet kicks the door open and says thank you very much.
Excellent racing today from Hobson. We already saw his great pass against Tony Kanaan back in race number 1, and now he's fulfilled the same thing, keeping himself inside of that podium positioning for top 3 here as he races past Maxime and is able to take that away. Will be difficult past this point to try to move up into those top 2. That's been the story all day, as Norris versus Almeida as they try to race against each other. Of course, Almeida having the tougher start this time since he won the previous race, having to start from P8 all the way in the back of the line, but he's continuing to make gains on Lando, as we can see him catching very close, just a 1/10 of a second behind him now.
Yeah, forcing Lando to go defensive through this left-hander, which is going to indeed leave him slow up towards this sweeping right-hander. It's uphill braking, but again, Lando holds firm, defending well, very valiantly here. Runs a little bit wide. Now we come up towards the chicane on the back straight. And to be fair, you know, if you've defended to this part of the circuit, you're pretty good until you get towards that final corner. So yeah, Lando just needs to position the car in the correct position and you're all good. Force Almeida to maybe be a little overzealous and make a mistake himself here, but look at him almost touching bumper to bumper as we head then towards the final few corners of this lap.
We did see Almeida get a slightly better exit coming off of the chicane because he checked in, but we are going to see him slip off just a little bit here and lose some time on it as he comes back around to Norris, gets that slight gap that he needs to keep himself in front for the rest of this lap as we close back around. We still have this very technical section though in the final 3 turns, so another opportunity may show up for Almeida to try and pass his challenger sitting in front of him.
Yeah, if there's one thing that Almeida will struggle to do is outbrake Norris. Norris may not be able to get the power down as early just due to lack of laps. Maybe within the sim, of course, he's too busy racing Formula 1 cars every single week, right? You know, 23 races or whatever it is this season. So yeah, Norris with the maybe the least amount of experience here, but try and outbrake Lando Norris at your peril. But he's forcing Almeida to be absolutely perfect. Down towards turn number 1 they will come, and Almeida again cannot outbrake him. But it's all about making sure you get a good exit out of turn number 1. It's very similar actually to Brands Hatch here. Not necessarily able to make the move through 1, you've got to just set it up so that you can then get a run down towards turn number 2. And actually you can make a move around the outside through this left-hander, because if you are, you know, overlapping the car in front through the outside, the next corner you'd have the inside line. But Norris again positioning his car in a perfect position, saying to Almeida, if you want to make an overtake on me, you have to be perfect.
We have seen this section before. Almeida was able to gain some time with the chicane coming up here, and we're going to be moving into that wide sweep. Now we can see Almeida going a little bit wider on the run up towards it here, so we will be a little bit further behind as they come into the curve itself. But this exit, this will be where it's important, and the entry onto the chicane as well. Norris coming up towards it. He'll try to cut himself a little bit wider. If the previous lap was any indication, you can see Almeida trying to go a little bit deeper into the curve itself, but still not able to make up the time he needs here. So once again, won't find that pass opportunity just yet as he goes wide on the next one.
And again, Norris is saying to him that I'm backing my ability here. You've got to be perfect if you want to make the overtake. If you get too close to me, you're likely to make a mistake. You're going to be blind on entry. You're going to be blind on exits. And again, another curve has caught Almeida out. Norris, though, runs wider. That will be a warning to get 3 of those before they will indeed get a drive-through penalty. So yeah, Norris running wide there, but ultimately gains a little bit of an advantage here as well. And the gap's as big as it's been, well, for a couple of laps now, actually. This is a huge gap, 1 second between these two, because they're almost touching on the previous lap.
Rest of the grid staying pretty static in the meanwhile as Hobson maintains his 3rd place position. We were seeing Boostler come within 2 seconds reach of him as of a few seconds prior, so making some small gains in that regard, but already halfway through the race, so he's going to have to increase that pace. Past that point, though, the grid is expanding with Maxime still in 5th, Tony Kanaan in 6th, Vandalay in 7th, and our P1 start for this one. Khleo Thomas still way back in 8th, unfortunately.
Yeah, Khleo Thomas down in 8th position, not getting the best of starts, unfortunately, but still running in P8, so that's always a positive to take from this. Lando still leads here by 1 second. Almeida just dropping a little bit further back here. Hobson 5.7 seconds back. Nice little gap then to Boostler F1. And then we've indeed got Maxime MXN and P5. Tony Kanaan, by the way, started from the pit lane, already up to P6 though. So he's gone from P8 to P6. He would have been a fair chunk of change behind everybody on the grid. Of course, Vandalay was right near the front at the start of this race as well. So yeah, Tony Kanaan is now only 1.6 seconds behind Maxime MXM, a recovery drive of the ages.
Same is going to be able to continue to recover that positioning, maybe with a pass opportunity coming up against Maxime in the next few laps here. Definitely one of our most experienced drivers, both in regards to racing as well. So excited to see what else he can do here with the rest of race 2 and 3. But it's back to our front pack between Lando Norris and Suellio Almeida. As Almeida continues to look for an opportunity, he's continued to hold the fastest lap in the meanwhile here, by the way, at that 146, as he got that very, very strong start. Was able to move himself forward, just has not been able to get that pass against Lando here, as he's been looking for it for the laps we've played out so far.
I love the fact you just Americanized Lando Norris's name there. Lando Norris. Still leading this race is Tony Kanaan, then trying to make his way through the back. Lovely lunge there up the inside. It was basically a freebie, to be fair. And actually, Kanaan and Maxime Bijmans have raced each other many a time before in the Porsche Esports Cup Series, the Celebrity Grid there as well. So they very much know each other's tendencies from racing in that series. Again, by the way, Almeida's now done the fastest lap of the race, but then as soon as he had the fastest lap, Lando Norris reciprocated by taking the fastest lap as well. So job done there, 46.132 as we come down towards turn number 1. Almeida then still very, very close here. For my money, there are 2 laps remaining in this race here, and Almeida just needs to be patient. That's the name of the game here. Be patient, force a mistake from Lando, and then you can make the overtake here. But Lando does look almost bulletproof around this circuit today.
And I'm going to be wanting to be a little more careful on race number 2, considering what happened as he took a turn just a little bit too hard back on Brand's hatch, spun out and ended up dropping down to P4 to try and finish off the race there. P5, I think, is actually where he ended up at. But regardless, moving on to the Hungaroring, where we have arguably even a rougher turn radius to try and work your way around for this track. You can tell he might be just a little bit more cautious this time to try and maintain that P1.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Norris is got the position he needs to be in. P1, it's easy to defend around the Hungaroring. Again, you've got to have the driver behind you go perfect. As we go through the chicane now, Almeida would have lost a bit of time, although Norris then runs wide on the exit of it. So, yeah, they're both making mistakes, but at different parts of corners. Are these two trying? Are these two on the limit? Yes. Yes, they absolutely are here. Is it a friendly race? Yes, you can't take the racing driver out of them, though. They are pushing. They want to win. It's as simple as that. As Norris then heads down towards those final few corners. We will have one more lap remaining after this, and he's got a nice gap to work with. You can see, though, Almeida opening up this right-hander a little bit better than Norris. We'll close up then towards that second to last corner again. It's all about maintaining your exit speed here. Make sure that you're on the power nice and early. Lando, though, indeed uses all of the pit entrance there and more. Running through that final corner, worth taking a bit of a late apex there, just like Almeida has, because Norris is quick through the first part, but on the second part, the momentum now will be with Almeida. Not quite close enough, though, to close that gap down in towards that first corner. But would he be able to indeed be ahead going down towards turn number 2? Lando Norris here, for me, only has to defend one more corner, and realistically, he should go out and win this race. Beautiful exit there from Lando, running down to 2. The gap's too big here, so he's done the job he needs to do. Almeida, who's looked the quickest driver out of everybody, let's be completely honest here, Lando's done a hell of a job here as it stands. Still, about 3/4 of a lap to go here, so it's still not done.
Great defense from Lando Norris, and he's continued to open up the gap between him and Suellio as well, so Suellio's chances of stealing away that P1 finish, unfortunately, are diminishing as this lap continues to unfold, and away from that, the rest of our grid has stayed in its same position throughout this race as well. Hobson still in 3rd, trying to catch up to pacing on our first 2. Boostler in 4th, Tony Kanaan back in 5th, Maxime in 6th, Vandalay in 7th, and Khleo Thomas as well in 8th place. Coming up to the final chicane here. We're going to see Lando Norris get some smooth navigation going on. It runs wide a little bit again into the dirt here. This could be an opportunity for Suellio as he comes back around, but not looking like he's going to be able to immediately capitalize on it. We'll see as we move up to the final turns if it will close the gap enough, but I believe Norris might have just been able to defend it.
Yeah, he's run wide there. He would have maintained a bit of speed, actually, just by the nature of opening up the circle on the exit. Runs wide once again into the 3rd to last corner. We will come. It's still Norris that leads. Almeida again opening up this right-hander a little bit better here, and actually might have a bit of a run down towards turn number 2. Not close enough to do it here, but it's going to come down to that final corner. Lando hugs that apex, will run the car out nice and wide. Do you dare take an open entry? He will. He will open up that final corner, then closes the door onto the curbing. Will be a little bit slower on the exit, but Almeida not quite close enough. It was first blood in race 1 to Almeida, but Lando Norris has come back with a charge, and he's going to indeed take race number 2 here at the Hungaroring. What a race from him. Almeida pushed, he pushed, but he couldn't quite get the job done.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so race number 2 has wrapped up. We do see Lando Norris topping things out to take the first place finish on this one. Certainly had a challenger throughout most of this race, though, and that was the real story. Suellio constantly trying to catch up, but unfortunately that back of the pack start just gave him a little bit too much of a disadvantage, it seemed, to try and catch up for him.
Yeah, 100%. It was the Lando Norris show this time round. He took full advantage of the misdemeanors that happened at the start of the race, let's say, and got to the head of the field. Almeida was right behind him throughout the race, but you know, in the most important areas of the circuit, the final couple of corners, first couple of corners of each lap. Lando just positioned his car in a perfect spot, utilizing all of the circuit to his best ability, and ultimately Almeida didn't really have a sniff. He got nearly alongside once, but that was it. Again, the nature of this circuit is very difficult to overtake, but if you've got someone like Lando Norris ahead of you, it becomes increasingly more difficult. Like, that's not a name you want in front of you, right? You know, oh, I've got to make one overtake to win this race. Oh, it's Lando Norris? Like, oh, it's crazy.
Certainly a challenge to be sure, but either way, did the best he could. We can go ahead and take a look at the race results, see where exactly all of our competitors ended up. As we already mentioned, Lando Norris topping things out. He gets 15 points for this one with a 146.13. I believe that gives him our fastest lap of the race as well. Suellio Almeida in second takes 12 points, just behind him with a 1.46 or 146, excuse me, .727. Then we had Brenton Hobson taking our third place finish. Boostler F1 carving all the way up into fourth. Tony Kanaan losing some placing there. Still an improvement to where he started, of course, but ends up in fifth with that 146. As we move down, Maxine in sixth itself. Vandalay taking seventh, and finally Khleo Thomas in last. Finished up, ladies and gentlemen. It'll come back to us one final time, and we'll get ready to head to our third and final track of the day. It'll be a nice trip to Italy, over to Misano, so stick with us. And when we do come back, we'll be getting you guys ready to jump into that third and final race here at the G Challenge.
Welcome to the Logitech McLaren G Challenge 2022, a global sim racing competition. Register at logitechgchallenge.com, then complete qualifying to make it through to the knockout grid stage. After each knockout race, top performing drivers will move forward to the next knockout round. Move through each knockout grid to reach the final knockout race of the split. Our top 8 knockout split winners will receive a Logitech G Pro X wireless headset, with our top 2 drivers receiving a signed Lando Norris 1 in 18 scale Formula 1 McLaren. Place in the top 4 to move on to the regional grand finals and take your shot at winning a once-in-a-lifetime experience at the 2023 Formula 1 Austrian Grand Prix, a Logitech G Pro Racing wheel, and a share of a $100,000 cash prizing. But anyone can win. Any competitor who completes a full race is eligible to join our Logitech McLaren G Challenge sweepstakes, where you can win Logitech G products or even the grand prize trip to the Austrian Grand Prix. Think you have what it takes? Sign up to compete at logitechgchallenge.com.
Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to get ready for our third and final race of the day here from the Logitech McLaren G Challenge Celebrity Grid. We'll be heading over to Misano for this third and final race. Let's waste no time. Go and get that grid order up on the screen and break this one down. As we talked about in race number 2, we will be doing a reverse grid, but this will now be the combined totals in points from races 1 and 2. That means Khleo Thomas still starts things out in pole position in P1. P2 will go over to Vandalay. P3 will belong to Maxime. Finally, we'll see Boostler F1 take up P4, Tony Kanaan in P5, Lando Norris will take up P6, Brenton Hobson will be in 7th, and finally, Suellio Almeida, our current leader, will be taking up P8. We're heading over to Misano as well. This track finally going to open things up a little bit for our drivers, give them some great passing opportunities. Where exactly are we going to see that action happening here, Luke?
Oh, absolutely everywhere. This is a full send circuit, the one track where there's lots of runoff everywhere. Almeida's going to have a target on his back for sure, and yeah, yeah, basically it's down to the likes of Hobson and Norris. If they want to, you know, take Almeida indeed off that top spot, they have got to go full send. They've got to make those overtakes, and they've got to do it as soon as they possibly can and take full advantage that he starts from the back. So they've already got the jump. They're going to be ahead of him. Can they hold on, though? That's the question.
All right, it's a question we're going to get answered very soon, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for the third race to get started. Let's head down to the track and get ready to go.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the final race then of our celebrity grid for the Logitech McLaren G Challenge 2022. And once again, it's Khleo Thomas on pole position with Ash Vandalay in second, Maxime MXM and Boostler. F1 are in third and fourth. We then got Tony Kanaan, who hopefully will indeed be able to start this race because he had a hell of a charge from the back of the grid last time out. We then got Lando Norris in sixth position, and then we got Hobson Almeida in seventh and eighth. Of course, they are the two leaders of the championship. Well, Almeida's the leader, Hobson in second. And it comes down to the final race then, Misano. Many more overtaking opportunities here. John, I'm expecting to see fireworks here in Italy.
Should be very fun once again, considering the race start. We head back on the Hungaroring with Hobson as well as Almeida and Lando Norris all racing for those top three positions right at the beginning. They'll have to fulfill the same exact destiny here on our third and final track. As like we said before, we've got that reverse grid start, so it's going to have to be a dash from the beginning. Khleo Thomas and Ash Vandalay were unable to hold their first and second place starts here, so we'll see if they can do a better job of defending it this time. Now the track's going to open up and we'll have way wider opportunities for our back leaders here to try and take those front positions.
Here we go then. 10 minutes of racing action here at Misano. Will it be a dash for Ash, who currently starts in second position? And then we've got Maxime, MXM and Boostler. Can they get up and challenge Khleo Thomas down towards turn one across the start finish line we go? And we are now green light racing, and already a massive carnage then as we hit into the wall there. I think that might have been Lando involved in that. He is P3 as it stands. Almeida already up to P2. Then there's contact between Lando and Maxime MXM. And wow, it's not the cleanest of starts here in Misano, but ultimately the front three, oh well, I'll tell you what, Almeida then nearly gets tagged by Lando. We can see Ash Vandalay is still holding on to the lead of this race as we head then down towards turn number 3.
Going to try and pull off some defensive driving here against Almeida, but unfortunately just gets brushed off the track in the process of trying to end up moving through Rio there. Doesn't work out for Ash Vandalay. She'll be knocked back down into fourth, and it's going to be Suellio Almeida in first to start things out. Lando Norris hot on the tail, though only 0.2 seconds behind. Tony Kanaan as well inside of this pack as it's much more congested at the start of Misano here for our third and final race.
Oh, there's some contact then between Kanaan and indeed you can see Vandalay and Lando looking at each other there saying hello, but there was contact between Kanaan and indeed Norris. Norris goes round, Kanaan moves up. And actually, I think that might have been Hobson in all fairness. They've got very similar liveries, but Hobson moves up to second position. Yeah, Kanaan's down P8, so it was Hobson that was involved there. But really, the winner out of this is Almeida, isn't it? Almeida into the distance. And I was thinking that there was a massive opportunity for someone like Hobson to go out and win this. There's still drivers facing the wrong way here. That's Kanaan and Khleo Thomas then at the back end of the grid. And, well, this has been less than optimal at the start of this race.
Definitely the case. We'll see how everyone looks to make up for that now, especially Tony Kanaan and Khleo Thomas way in the back. I think having contact with each other as well, as we can see a little bit of caution coming out towards them, able to clean that up without too much of an issue. But once again, props to Suellio Almeida as he's able to take that first place start on this one, moving all the way up from the back of the pack and once again excelling. He's got a new challenger this time though, as Lando Norris has a bit more work to do as he ran into plenty of trouble on the first lap there. He's going to be trying to work his way up towards the front of the pack, so it's now Hobson versus Almeida for the front of the race.
I just saw in the background there's a lovely little exchange between Norris and Vandalay. Really nice driving between the two of them, considering what we've seen so far during this race. Could only be explained as probably the end scene of Endgame from Marvel. That was just catastrophic at the start here, and as you can see, that's a very scratched up McLaren, unfortunately, for Norris, but still has some pace. We're going off to try and chase down Maxime MXM, potentially Boostler as well. Could Lando get up to fight for that second spot? It's going to be very, very tough with only 7 minutes 40 seconds left on the clock.
Very short race here, so not a lot of time for our racers to try and gain pace, especially considering with the split nature that the overall grid will be set into now after all the contact we had on lap number 1. Things have calmed down now, and this is also the best performance we've seen so far out of Boostler's been hanging around P5, P6 for most of our races so far. Obviously an F1 driver, sim driver this is, out of Mexico. He's been trying to get used to the ACC mechanics coming into this one. He may finally get himself a good opportunity as he's in the race for this top 3 positioning here, currently trying to pursue Hobson about a second behind him.
Yeah, I wonder if Almeida may have some damage there from the start of this race, because he's not streaking away. Hobson and Boostler are, of course, two very, very fast drivers, but you know, historically in the races we've seen today, Almeida's been the star of the show in terms of absolute raw pace. But Hobson is keeping pace here with Almeida, so I'm wondering if Almeida has some damage. Or maybe I'm just doing Hobson a disservice here, and he's just flying.
To be fair, we have seen Hobson make up some good pace previously back on lap number 1. Got himself bumped back down from P3 into P4 and had himself in an extended lap with Tony Kanaan, where he was eventually able to take control of that P3 position in front of him again. The legend that Tony Kanaan is. We are going to still see Lando Norris continue to make up positioning, though, as he just managed to pass Maxime MXM, pushing her back into P5, putting Lando Norris now into the top 4, but he's got a long way to go before he catches up with our top 3s. It's currently Boostler, by the way, holding our top lap in the back of that pack.
Yeah, right, he is the fastest currently in P3. Slipstream will be a factor, but not a crazy amount of time gained from that. So that's a really good lap time there, actually, at 37.545, half a second faster than Almeida. So yeah, Boostler really is finding some supreme pace as Norris now clear of Maxime MXM, off to try and chase down that lead group of 3. Already half a second found in the first sector here of lap number 3. And maybe Norris has got some treats in store for us over the next about 5.5 minutes.
He's calming down a little bit now, so we can talk more about Misano. We talked about on Brands Hatch about how obviously you don't have a whole lot in terms of extension on track limits. I feel like Misano is almost an exact opposite of that, where it gives you almost too much, the fact that we have to add those speed bumps in on a few of the turns as well. Where's the best opportunity for our drivers to take advantage of this one going around the circuit?
Oh, it's you can pretty much overtake anywhere here if you nail it. Again, it's all about setting up an overtake by, for instance, turn number 1 is a really quick corner, which is, for a European circuit, it's quite against the nature of our circuits in Europe. So yeah, it's all about turn 2. You've got to set it up through turn 2, so you've got to make sure you're, earlier on the brakes, on the power a little bit earlier as well, to then set it up down in towards turn number 3. But also, there are some really nice 90-degree corners at the end of the circuit. Maybe a little bit too fast to make a move, but if you can force someone off line through there, it means that they're ultra slow going down the start-finish straight. So again, final corner, try and make someone in front of you make a mistake, and then try and make a run down towards the first sector. It's very technical through sector number 1 here at Misano.
We're seeing Suellio Almeida finally make some good pacing going here, as I think he was just driving a little bit defensively to start things out, trying to watch out considering the shenanigans that had gone on lap number 1. Tony Kanaan in the meanwhile looks like he may be catching up to Ash Vandalay, only 0.3 seconds behind. Gonna go, looks like, for a pass opportunity coming up onto this corner here, and might be able to make it happen. Indeed, cuts off Vandalay and pushes her back into 7th.
Yeah, lovely move there from Kanaan, using all of the experience there. Vandalay leaving the room, and again it takes 2 to tango. And well, Tony does make that move then up to P6. Boostler F1, by the way, 0.2 of a second here behind Hobson. These two, because they're fighting, they're just giving time away really to Almeida. So Almeida now with a 2.6 second gap. And if they keep fighting like this, Lando could potentially get involved here. You can see Lando just in the background there, could potentially get involved here for that battle of the podium. 4 minutes to go here? Still plenty of time. And again, Lando's going to be looking in front here going, go on. Just keep battling, go side by side throughout every single lap here, and it gives me a chance to catch up.
We have seen the time between him as well as Boosters continue to shrink as well. I believe it was sitting right around 8 seconds when he initially took up P4, so he's already made some pretty good gains in that considering the small amount of time that's gone since then. So you might be right about that, but still looking at Boostler, try to find this opportunity to pass on to Hobson. As you said, that is allowing for Almeida to really get away with things and really lock in his current first place position.
Yeah, absolutely. Almeida just looking untouchable, really. Of course, in race number 2, Lando came out victorious. Almeida just not able to make the overtake again. Still looked like he probably had a little bit more pace than everybody, but ultimately Lando lent on every inch of experience he has. Lando's not an easy driver to overtake, that's a fact. It doesn't matter whether it be Formula 1 or whether it be on ACC right now. He is not an easy driver to overtake. He is on the charge here. Boostler and Hobson are starting to close back in on Almeida, although Almeida now has got the fastest lap of the race. It's now a 36.977. But Boostler just cannot get the job done on Hobson here. This really is playing to the hands of Lando Norris.
He's been stuck behind him for a solid lap or two now here as he just looks for every single opportunity to get past it. Gonna go so wide on the track limits here as well to try to make the move, but unfortunately next turn will cut him off, send him even further off the track as well. Hobson very smart about how he's been managing this defense. Yeah, it's gonna guarantee him that P2 finish as long as he can keep it, and more importantly keep the distance open between himself as well as Lando Norris, but it won't help to do any favors to close the gap between himself and Almeida, who's just going to be chilling in first place here with the fastest lap, but at least 2 seconds of distance between himself and Hobson.
Yeah, again, there's not enough time really on the clock here for Lando to catch up. He really does need these two to have a bit of a ding-dong, in all fairness, and both end up facing the wrong way if he's to get involved. But yeah, you're right, Hobson there, his defense was perfect. He didn't go completely towards the apex in terms of defending, so it meant he could still get a nice bit of pace on the exit of what would have been turn number 5. But yeah, it was a case of Boostler needed to be on, had to have an overlap on the exit turn number 5 to make sure that he can get it stuck. And yeah, the corner's just too tight. If you've got the inside line there and you get the power down relatively early, you're golden. So again, we'll see probably that from Hobson once again. I think we've got 2 laps remaining here at the end of this race. Norris about 3.3 seconds behind. Never say never. Again, if Boostler and Hobson do have a bit of a coming together, they don't necessarily need to lose a massive amount of time here. Maybe Norris does have a surprise. You can just see him just in the background coming then through turn number 4 as we see then Almeida leading the way here. 2.9 seconds just looks so strong today.
Boostler finally losing a little bit of that time between himself and Hobson as well. Hobson successfully finished things off here to lock in P2. We are still seeing Tony Kanaan try to make a push for P5 finish as he's got Maxime within just 1 second's reach. Was sitting at around 2 a few moments ago as well, so we might have a pass opportunity showing up there for Tony Kanaan if he can get it done in this next lap and a half of racing. As we're coming to the tail end of things now. Once again, the big story of the day. Still Suellio Almeida just dominating things as the Canadian here, shutting down our races. P2 finish on race number 2, P1 finish on race number 1, and looking likely to lock in another first place finish for our final race on Misano.
Yeah, this is version 2 of the Kanaan versus MXM battle we already saw earlier on today at Hungaroring. Now we're seeing it here at Misano. Kanaan then's going to have to be forced to go all the way around the outside. It's a triple right-hander, so it really does favour the inside car, but I tell you what, Kanaan with so much grip around the outside, and well, very brave overtake it is indeed, will configure the move up into P5 once again. It's not been the greatest of days for Kanaan, unfortunately, but he's done very well to put himself in a P5 here today. Was facing the wrong way at the start of this race. Almeida then about to cross the line here to start the final lap of today's race. Boostler has just dropped off of Hobson. Norris now 1.3 seconds behind. Is there a moment of magic here at the death for Lando Norris to potentially get onto that podium?
What we can see here is Norris, of course, has been super impressive today as well, with just his ability to keep up pacing back on race number 2 and avoid a pass from Suellio Almeida as he was hunting desperately for a perfect finish today, wanting to take P1 in all 3 races. Of course, Lando able to deny that outright, and now going to be still looking to try and get his own perfect podium finish by at least getting into 3rd place for this one, closing in onto Boostler, but also coming up on around the halfway mark for our final lap here. The time of opportunity is closing, so we will need to strike soon if there is going to be a window at any point here.
You mentioned about the track limits here and the runoffs around here. Lando using every inch and more of the circuit, running out wide as best he possibly can just to maintain speed, and is closing up to the back here of Boostler's. Boostler actually makes a bit of a mistake there, runs a little bit wide. Actually, is that Boostler? Well, yes it is. So Boostler running a little bit wide there, just in behind Hobson. I just think Lando's going to run out of time here to get onto that podium. Again, Almeida, you just saw there briefly leading out the front. No one's going to catch up to Almeida now. It is really about these 3 battling for position with merely a few corners remaining of this championship, I guess, and the race as well, as Boostler then runs out wide, leaves the door open. Norris tries to send one up the inside, was always a little bit too far behind, as Almeida then rounds the final corner. It's going to be a second win out of 3 here. Wasn't able to get the job done on Lando in race number 2, but it is Almeida then who takes the victory. Will have the most amount of points here and will take the championship as well. Congratulations to him. Norris not able to close up to get up towards that top 3. Very unfortunate there. It was the race start really that upended Norris's progress here. But Hobson does take P2, which I feel like will gain in P2 in the championship overall. I think Boostler in P3 will be maybe P4. I think Norris will get P3 in the championship. And then we've got Tony Kanaan, who's just been battling all day long here today, and indeed will be in P5. Then Maxime MXM in 6th position comes across the line. It'll be Vandalay and it'll be Khleo Thomas. Again, a very interesting race here at Misano, very different to the Hungaroring and Brands Hatch, but still a very cool spectacle to watch.
And we come back to the desk one final time, ladies and gentlemen, after Misano has all wrapped up. Definitely the most exciting out of the 3 of our races. We had a mad scramble at the beginning of it, which created some early problems for Lando Norris as he tried to catch up to a very tight top 3 start of the race.
Yeah, 100%, but also you've got to, tip your hat to Almeida because he kept himself out of trouble. That could have been so easily a race ender as well for Almeida, but yeah, got out into the lead and really didn't look back. I guess the first couple of laps maybe was losing a bit of time, but I think it was just a case of just get into a comfortable rhythm and then take over after that. And then we had Hobson and indeed Boostler, should I say, just battling for position so frantically that actually it was, what, 8 seconds the difference between Lando and them about 4 minutes into the race when he finally got up into P4, and by the end it was only 1 second. Like, they were battling so ferociously, and Lando had that snifter of an opportunity at a podium, but it just ran out of time there, unfortunately. But it was the Almeida show in the end today, wasn't it? Absolutely outstanding from start to finish.
That very much was the case for all 3 of our races. Let's go and get the final race standings, of course, from Misano up on the board. Suellio Almeida topping things out. He gets another 15 points racked up for that first place finish. Brenton Hobson, a very impressive second place for him, so he'll find 12 points. Boostler getting himself into a podium finally as well will take 10 points. Lando Norris down in 4th for 8, and things continue, of course, to decrease in value from there, which leaves our overall totals locked in as Suellio Almeida dominates and takes number 1 for today's challenge with 42 points overall across our 3 races. Brenton Hobson finishes off in 2nd place with 34 points. Lando Norris takes our final podium position in 3rd for 29 points overall. Boostler will take 4th with 24. Tony Kanaan at 22 in 5th. Maxime down to 12 points for 6th place. Vandalay with 6 points in 7th. And then finally, Khleo Thomas with 3. Close things out for that, ladies and gentlemen, and overall that closes out today's celebrity grid for the G Challenge. I want to thank you all very much for tuning in to today's very, very fun races. Luke, any closing remarks from you before we end out the show?
I'm going to be honest, I think if you ran that competition maybe 10 times, Almeida comes on top 10 times out of 10, but I think from 2nd down to maybe 5th position, they would have swapped positions every single time. Like, a little bit of misfortune for certain drivers, but then again, you know, Almeida taking full advantage of when that happened as well. But realistically, everybody gave it their all right. Nobody was, you know, holding back. We saw elbows out from Vandalay at one point with Lando Norris. Like, that's exactly what you want to see from all of the drivers. But again, a huge thank you to all of them for giving up their time for this. But I think it's just been fun, and I think that's the whole nature of this competition. It's always about having fun, being inclusive, and just giving people an opportunity to race.
Absolutely the case. We want to thank you all one more time for tuning in to today's festivities, and we'll hopefully see you all soon on the grid.
Coming into the ring with blows that's real big. I gotta do it big, that's the only way I can live. Gotta do it big. I gotta do it big. I gotta do it big. Gotta do it big, that's the only way to live. Come on. Yeah, the odds is real big. Job that's real big. Say trying a little, my God, it's real big. Stayed up on the ground and the cars is real big. I gotta do it big, the only way that I can live.